Good morning. This hearing of the Subcommittee on Horticulture, Research, Biotechnology, and Foreign Agriculture to review the Smith-Lever Act on its 100th anniversary will come to order. In consultation with the ranking member, Dr. L. Washington Lyons, Executive Administrator for the Association of Extension Administrators, will be testifying in the place of Mr. Delbert T. Foster due to travel issues, if there is no objection. Seeing no objection, today's hearing of the Subcommittee on Horticulture, Research, Biotechnology, and Foreign Agriculture will review the Smith-Lever Act of 1914 on its 100th anniversary. Thank you all for being here today to discuss our nationwide cooperative extension service. We are pleased to have before us several witnesses who are involved and experience the benefits of the extension service. As we hear from our distinguished panel of witnesses today, we hope to gain an understanding of the role of our nation's land-grant colleges and universities continue to play in providing the needs of the public through the resources and extension work established under the Smith-Lever Act. To better understand where we are, we have to understand where we have come from. A century ago, Congress created a nationwide cooperative extension service through the Smith-Lever Act to address rural agricultural issues. It formally established the partnership between the agricultural colleges and universities and the United States Department of Agriculture to create a transformative education system. Specifically, the Act stated as its purpose, in order to aid in diffusing among the people of the United States useful and practical information on subjects relating to agriculture, uses of solar energy with respect to agriculture, home economics and rural energy, and to encourage the application of the same, there may be continued or inaugurated in connection with the College of Colleges in each state, territory, or possessions. At that time, more than 50% of the United States population lived in rural areas, and 30% of the workforce was engaged in farming. Through the establishment of the National Cooperative Extension Service, the Smith-Lever Act helped to create a partnership between land-grant colleges who were conducting research and the farmer who could use the information to improve his farming systems, thereby improving the lives and leading the nation into an agricultural revolution. For example, in 1945, it took 14 labor hours to produce 100 bushels of corn on 2 acres of land. Today, you can produce 100 bushels of corn on less than an acre. Over time, the Extension Service has adapted but continues to address a wide range of human, plant, and animal needs in both urban and rural areas. Today's Extension educational offerings are in the areas of 4-H youth development, agriculture, leadership development, natural resources, family and consumer sciences, and community and economic development. Before us today is a panel that will provide their unique perspectives from many of the various components of our country's extension services. We're honored to be joined by Mr. Delbert Foster, Acting Vice President for the Division of Land Grant Services, directly involved in outreach and engagement to the citizens of South Carolina on behalf of South Carolina State University. Mr. Foster also represents the critical contribution of the 1890 land grant community to the overall extension mission. We're also joined by Dr. Soni Ramaswamy, Director of the USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture, who oversees NIFO awards, funds for a wide range of extramural research, education, extension projects, and addresses the needs of farmers, ranchers, and agricultural producers. Dr. Scott Reid, Vice Provost for the University Outreach and Engagement at Oregon State University, also joins us to discuss his involvement in the growing number of educational programs within the OSU Extension Service, which enhance the economic, environmental, and social welfare of society. Finally, I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Tess Hammock, a sophomore at the University of Georgia, Go Dogs, to share her experience and insight as a member of the Youth Council for the 4-H National Board of Trustees. We appreciate the time each of you has given to prepare for this hearing. Your testimony will be important to evaluate the current state of the cooperative extension service and ensure a successful model of cooperative extension education for years to come. Thank you, and now I'd like to recognize my friend and colleague from Oregon, Ranking Member Mr. Kurt Schrader, for any opening remarks he may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate having this hearing today. Now that we're past the Farm Bill, which I enjoyed working with you on a lot, and I think was pretty decent piece of legislation, time to get back to meat potatoes type issues, things that make a difference on the ground every day back in our districts. Smith-Lever allows us to do that. really does allow us to do that. I'd like to welcome the witnesses also. Thank you for making the trek, especially in this weather. Good to have you all here. And two good friends of mine from back in my Oregon State legislative days, Sonny and Scott. It's really good to see you guys here. I appreciate you coming out and being able to tell the story that's been so successful for us back home. I think as we approach this 100th anniversary that authorized the extension, cooperative extension programs, I think that's a big point. These are public-private partnerships, allow us to leverage taxpayer dollars to help us feed the world. And I think in this day and era, even though the urban population has increased and some of our rural population has decreased, it is important, or maybe even more important, for extension to be out there, because we're feeding a lot more people now that don't raise their own food, and Extension talks about that. Personally, I'm a huge fan. I farmed for over 20 years. Oregon State University's Extension Service was critical to my early success as a strawberry grower, trying to find out the right varieties and ways to go about the cultivation. We actually have a huge master gardener following in our state of Oregon. A lot of our urban counterparts are very excited about those opportunities. And it makes a nice symbiotic relationship, and I think Smith-Lever has that ability that we've seen over the last 100 years to be relevant not just to rural America, but urban America also. And a case in point about how critical extension is was the outbreak of the Drosophila suzuki issue with the sown fruit. Back in, I think, 2010, I was able to get the then chairman of the committee to come to Oregon. We convinced him of the work that Oregon State could do. We were able to get a grant and stop a huge, huge pest from devastating some of America's agriculture that, again, helps feed the rest of the world. So I'm very excited about the opportunity here. I think it's going to be a great hearing, hopefully a great recognition of the work that's done, and look forward to hearing from the witnesses today. And, again, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. And the chair would request that other members submit their opening statements for the record so that witnesses may begin their testimony, and to ensure that there is ample time for questions. For the panel, I'd like to welcome our panel of witnesses to the table. Dr. Sunny Ramaswamy, Director, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington, D.C. Ms. Tess Hammock, National 4-H Council, Board of Trustees, Youth Class, University of Georgia, Athens, Georgia. Dr. Scott Reid, Vice Provost, University Outreach and Engagement Director, Oregon State University Extension Service, from Corvallis, Oregon. And Dr. Washington Lyons, Executive Administrator for the Association of Extension Administrators, North Carolina A&T University. Dr. Ramaswamy, please begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about something that is like talking to my own family here about this incredible enterprise that we've got in the United States called Cooperative Extension Service. As you noted, Mr. Chairman and Congressman Schrader, it is the 100th anniversary of this enterprise, and I'd like to share with you a little bit of my thoughts, and particularly share with you also where we want to go as we go forward, looking at the future as well. And as you noted, the Smith-Lever Act was passed in 1914, and it's been around for 100 years. And in my mind, I think truly the global preeminence of America in general, and particularly about the food and agriculture enterprise, in large measure is attributable to that Cooperative Extension Service. And Mr. Chairman, as you noted, the ability to grow food compared with what we were able to do 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, with fewer people on smaller acreages of land, is an incredible testimony to the kind of work that Extension has done. So Cooperative Extension Service itself, it is a three-way partnership. It is a partnership with the federal government and the state government and the local government. So funding is provided by all three entities. And the funding from the federal government is provided by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture in behalf of the U.S. government, the United States Department of Agriculture. Now, I could go on and wax eloquent about thousands of stories, and in fact, you have both shared some stories already. But what I'd like to do is to just take couple of examples and speak to the amazing things that happen in Cooperative Extension Service, and in large measure is responsible for the strength that we have as a nation as well, this global preeminence. I'll keep referring to that as I make my comments here as well. Now, in terms of technical education to growers and land managers, and this is an area, this is the agriculture and natural resources area that Extension provides support in. Now, whether it is a backyard gardener or a farmer that farms maybe 1,000 acres of cotton or peanuts, or a large rancher with thousands of acres of ranches in Oregon or other parts of our nation, these folks, they get their knowledge, their information from those local boots on the ground. Our local boots on the ground of the Cooperative Extension Service are referred to as educators, county extension agents, as faculty. Depending on the state we're in, each one of them is called differently. But all these folks, they get their knowledge from the boots on the ground, these local extension educators that we've got. Or they might crowdsource the best knowledge from a whole community of practice that is part of what we refer to today as e-extension, this online community of practice that we've got. Literally, you can bring together, if there's a problem with horses or organic production systems or Drosophila suzuki, the insect that Congressman Schrader referred to, you can bring in the best brains together as part of this community of practice to be able to address that. So that's the breadth of efforts that are contributed to by our extension personnel across America. I want to share with you a couple of examples from the state of California and from the state of Georgia as well in this ag and natural resources world. As you know, droughts have been afflicting our nation pretty much west of the Mississippi, and particularly California and the West Coast. They epitomize the situation that we've got. And our extension personnel at the University of California system have undertaken applied research and extension efforts in coming up with more efficient irrigation systems. They've created an app, for example, for smartphones and tablets where the local producers working with water conservation districts and others can go ahead and bank the water in the wintertime when you have excess water and runoff and things like that, and then deploy that water that's been banked in the summertime when you need the water for the crops to be grown. Two quick, simple examples of the kind of work that's being done. And I can, as I said, go on and on about other states as well. Another area, going to, for example, Georgia itself, one of the examples that I'd like to share with you, and I know Congressman Scott knows this particular example, is the blueberry industry in that state. It went in a matter of about 10 years with the help of Georgia researchers, University of Georgia researchers and Cooperative Extension Service, has gone from a farm gate value of about $20 million to about $150 million in a matter of 10 years. And this has come about because of the wonderful work done by the researchers in developing new varieties. There's a particular variety called Titan, T-I-T-A-N. And this variety, the blueberries, if you can believe this, they're as big as a quarter. The diameter of those blueberries are as big as a quarter. And I've had the privilege of tasting them as well. They're fantastic tasting as well. So gives you the kind of things that are going on. In the realm of family and consumer education, FNEP is a program that works particularly with limited resource families. And research recently has demonstrated there's reduced healthcare costs, reduced absenteeism, reduced dependence on emergency food assistance as well. In the realm of community development, in the state of Oregon, for example, we have a program, Extension runs a program called Recipe to Market. And that one works with entrepreneurs, people wanting to be entrepreneurs, in offering them a boot camp where they're learning about business plans, what kind of products to take to market, etc. And the consequence of that is 3 individuals have a company that produces several $1 million worth of economic activity as well. And that produces jobs and contributing to a number of jobs that are being created. In terms of youth development, we've got Tess Hammock is going to testify about 4-H, and she really, to me, epitomizes the amazing things that are going on with our youth. We have 7 million children in America that are part of 4-H, and in large measure, the success is because of the volunteers that we have, about 500,000 volunteers that work with 4-H as well.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Thank you very much for that opportunity, Congressman Scott.
Yeah. Ms. Hammock.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today to testify on the importance of the Smith-Lever Act, co-authored a century ago by a fellow Georgian, the late Senator Hoke Smith. It's an honor for me to share my story this morning and to tell you how the Smith-Lever Act, one of the world's most innovative educational ideas ever, the cooperative extension system of our nation's land-grant universities, has helped to shape my life and the person I am today. As a young woman growing up in Georgia, I had access to a life-changing experience called 4-H, the youth development program of Cooperative Extension, the largest and one of the most effective youth programs in America. For more than 100 years, 4-H has stood behind the idea that young people are the greatest single resource we have to create a better world. I'm deeply grateful for the leadership skills I acquired in 4-H and the amazing adults who believed in me, including my county extension agent and state program leaders. Without them, my life would have been very different. Two questions that I wanted to answer for you today are, how did 4-H enhance my leadership, abilities, and skills, and how am I putting those skills into practice today? 4-H taught me that being a leader begins with confidence. And there were three things that helped me develop confidence, and that was participating in public speaking competitions, serving as a state officer, and performing with the musical group Clovers and Company. 4-H gave me the opportunity to discover for myself what my gifts and talents are. Moreover, it gave me the tools, the opportunities, and the platform to master, and then to demonstrate those skills, just like today. My passion is public speaking, and for millions of others in 4-H, it might be creating an enterprise garden in a food desert, cultivating a peer intervention program, or designing a smarter robot. Whatever it is, 4-Hers, in partnership with caring adults, are becoming confident, capable young men and women with purpose, changing and leading the world today and into the future. There's proof that 4-H works also, according to a decade-long research study completed by researchers at Tufts University. 4-Hers excel beyond their peers. They're nearly 4 times more likely to contribute to their communities. 4-Hers are 2 times more likely to be civically active, make healthier choices, and participate in science programs during out-of-school time. In addition, they are tackling issues that matter most in the areas of science, healthy living, and food security, an issue that is important to me and is the reason I'm pursuing my undergraduate degree in agricultural communications at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. Agriculture touches every person on the planet every day. It has been part of our story since the beginning of time, and it's vital to our very existence. Agriculture has a very important story to tell, and I want to be one of the voices telling that story. 1 in 7 people in the world go to bed hungry every night. Food production must double by the year 2050 to meet the demands of our world's population growth. No one knows where the food, water, or energy will come from, but we do know that the farmer who will feed the world in 2050 is 13 years old today. This is just one example of why an investment in young people is the most important investment you can make. These experiences that I've shared with you today have brought me to this place and made me who I am. Because others have invested in me, I have a responsibility to make a difference in this world, a responsibility I feel that I'm well prepared for, thanks to my family, my faith, and to 4-H. There are more than 20 million 4-H alumni in this country, many right here in the halls of Congress, who are leading our communities and our country in remarkable ways. As a youth trustee of the board of National 4-H Council, I'm passionate about empowering youth to serve their communities and to make a positive difference in their lives and those of others. Our pledge at National 4-H Council is to increase access to the 4-H experience for millions more young people throughout the United States, no matter where they live, on a farm, in an urban food desert, on a U.S. military base, or a tight-knit small town like Forsyth, Georgia, where I grew up. As we begin a second century of service, our mission is to share the incredible story of Cooperative Extension, the power of 4-H program to change lives and save lives, and to highlight the urgent need for all of us to invest in young people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for your support and the opportunity to tell my 4-H story.
Thank you, Ms. Amick. Mr. Reid.
Chairman Scott, members of this subcommittee, it's my privilege to be representative of extension leaders across the 106-member land-grant system. And as I begin, I'd like to offer my thanks for your having moved Concurrent Resolution 86 that honors and inspires those that have spent their careers working as public servants on behalf of the cooperative Extension service. 2 months from now, we'll recognize the signing of this historic 1914 Act that created a funding mechanism and a system unlike any other in our country. I like to describe the federal dollars as the hardest working. They're the first ones in the door that cause states and counties to make contributions to the same powerful system. This relationship connects knowledge resources to issues. It's driven by national objectives, but it's customized to meet local and state needs. My own career is an example. I began working in the private sector in a pulp and paper company in northern Minnesota. I was running a small research department, and in that capacity, I was more of a problem solver. I had more problems than I could solve. To my aid came the land-grant University Extension Service that provided me with intellectual depth, research design, access to graduate students, all things I did not have. I provided access to land and researchable problems. Together, we worked with the local county extension office and developed an applied learning laboratory and did things together that neither of us could have done separately. I'm sure that back in your own states, you no doubt see the effects of extension work all around you. While it's true that we count and report to you things like people reached, acres impacted, dollars saved and earned, we do all that, but the real durable effects of extension work is on public value that manifests as healthy people, a healthy planet, and healthy economies. So what are some of these innovations that you might be seeing? In my home state of Oregon, the Extension Service brings together vineyard managers, winemakers, and students in a shared learning environment, a recent innovation. We bring those audiences together both in person and online that helps to advance the dramatic growth in this agricultural sector. The result, wine grapes have catapulted to the 17th most important crop of more than 200 commodities in Oregon. In Minnesota, concerns over the influence of climate change and weather patterns are driving Extension to develop and implement adaptation strategies. Community by community in Minnesota, Extension helps growers make plant selection decisions, how to deal with uninvited pests, manage extreme variations in rainfall, and choose levels of crop insurance. In Georgia, rising energy costs have made energy efficiency a high priority for farms, yet many farmers have trouble financing these kind of improvements. Energy assessments across 47 farms in Georgia provided by Extension assisted in $3.6 million of grant-requested renovations and projected annual savings of more than $10,000 per farm. And finally, in Oklahoma, development of best management practices regarding the intersection of cattle grazing and wheat production created decision models and extension education about their application that translated to $285 million of savings from reducing lost production to wheat. While it's true we've been teaching for the last 100 years, we've also learned and adapted our strategies for the 21st century. Today's issues are complex, and there are few simple answers anymore. Beyond simply sharing information, we bring knowledge to the table, developed by our research community that's stimulated by the work of this subcommittee. And then we partner. We partner with communities of place, communities of interest, communities of practice to adapt and share practices that are implemented across the landscapes. We're moving beyond simple outreach to what we call engagement. Outreach, we like to say, begins with an answer. Engagement ends with one. Our local presence allows for personal relationships and face-to-face education, but Extension also thrives in the web-based and socially networking world. Anywhere, anytime, any format defines our national network. As an illustration, this month we'll answer 5,000 questions through the electronic Ask an Expert system, part of the e-extension program that's funded through a congressional line that's called New Technologies in Agriculture. With leadership of visionary policymakers and annual appropriations of about $300 million of capacity funds through the Smith-Lever Act, which I'll point out is less than $1 per American, we keep a local office open in more than 3,000 United States counties. We enroll 7 million youth in the legendary 4-H program. We advance nutritional support to limited resource families. And we focus on rapid response through Extension's disaster education network, among other priorities. Finally, while recognizing 100 years of Smith-Lever is important, this isn't about looking in the rearview mirror. More critical is the windshield view of our adaptation to new issues, new audiences, new approaches. In the next 100 years, we'll continue translating science for practical applications. We'll engage learners to co-develop solutions will transform individuals, families, communities, and businesses in both rural and urban environments. That's the work of cooperative extension.
Thank you, Dr. Reid. Dr. Lyons.
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today on behalf of the Association of Extension Administrators. I would just like to take a few minutes to share with you the importance of cooperative extension to the state, to our communities, and to this country as we celebrate 100 years of extending knowledge and changing lives. But first, I would like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committees for your support for the funding that you have provided to cooperative extension capacity as well as the competitive funding. Without the capacity funding, we would not be able to have the infrastructure that we would need to answer the questions and to provide the programs to change the lives of the people we work with. Without the capacity funding, we would not be able to be effective in implementing the competitive funding that we receive through NIFA at USDA. The land grant system was created by the MAR Act of 1862 and 1890. The 1862 MAR Act created the land grant universities in each state, and the 1890 MAR Act extended the land grant status to the historical black land grant universities in the southern states and the border states. The Smith-Lever Act, as you know, gave rise to the Cooperative Extension Program in 1914, which is a unique partnership between the United States Department of Agriculture and the land grant universities. However, when the Smith-Lever Act was passed in 1914, it created the extension program at the 1862 land grant universities. The Act did not provide funding for the 1890 land grant universities at that time, and in 1972, Congress appropriated the first funding to support extension at the 1890 land grant university, and that gave rise to the support of both 1862 and 1890 land grant universities, sharing the responsibility of implementing extension programs in the southern states as well as throughout this country. Today, I'd like to focus my comments primarily on what the 1890 land grant universities are doing to contribute to extension programs in this country. The 1890 land grant programs include Tuskegee as an 1890 land grant university, although Tuskegee is not an 1890, but it is an institution that benefits from the Land Grant Act and carry on a great deal of work and support of cooperative extension and the land grant mission. In general, all the cooperative extension programs are designed to help people to develop the knowledge and skills they need to solve problems that they are facing, but the 1890 land grant university have a special mission and mandate. Many of these people have limited resources. They do not have the same opportunities as others, so the 1890 focus on that client group. The cooperative extension programs through the 1890s have programs that are comprised of a broad range of science-based educational efforts which have been proven to strengthen the food and agriculture industry, particularly small and limited resource farmers, by developing agricultural production systems that are efficient, sustainable, and highly competitive in the global economy. Enhance the health of families through diet and nutrition and food safety education and their economic well-being through practical financial education. Enhance youth and skill in science, technology, math, citizenship, and leadership. And also foster strong, stable communities through leadership development efforts and encouraging entrepreneurship. As cooperative extension continues in the future, the focus will be on addressing emerging and critical issues that are impacting families, youth, communities, and agricultural producers. With the projected growth in the population, there will be many issues and challenges that must be addressed in both rural and urban areas. Cooperative extension, with the research base at the Land Grant University, will be in a unique position to help address those challenges and issues. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, the future of the land grant system in this country looks great, and we look forward to continuing your guidance, your oversight, and support during the next century of discovery, teaching, and engagement. We clearly understand what we do is not about us, but about the people we serve. God bless you, the members of this subcommittee, and God bless America. Thank you.
Amen, Dr. Lyons. And I see that Mr. Delbert Foster has joined us. I know that the weather and traffic caused you some problems.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for being here. And I'd like to ask unanimous consent that Mr. Foster be allowed to participate in the as a witness in the question and answer session of the committee. And seeing no objection, Mr. Foster, we will be happy to have your participation in the question and answer session. If you'd like to make a brief statement, since you came in late, be happy to allow you a couple of minutes for that, and then we'll move into the questions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate that. And this is a prime example of what extension does in this country. For Dr. Lyons to pick right up and take the baton and deliver what extension is supposed to deliver is like an extension agent in the county that may have had a flat tire or may have had a delayed meeting. The participants, the clients, the citizens are expecting extension to produce. And we do it with a team effort in our states, in our communities, and in our districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. And the Chair would like to remind members that they will be recognized for questioning in the order of seniority for members who were here at the start of the hearing. After that, members will be recognized in order of arrival. We will rotate between Democrats and Republicans, and I appreciate the members' understanding. I now recognize myself to ask a question of the fellow Georgia Bulldog, if I may. Ms. Hammock, as a leader in 4-H, which is one of my favorite organizations, I can't help but give credit to FFA as well, as I sit here as a member of the Ag Committee. What would you suggest are the greatest opportunities and challenges confronting the 4-H program as it begins its second century?
Honestly, I look back over the last century of 4-H, and we started as a canning club in Crisp County in 1902. So I can't help but look at the rich history that we have to draw from. And you say challenges, but I look at this number. We serve 7 million youth across the world. We are in 3,068 counties across the United States. So I don't see challenges. And even if there are challenges, I firmly believe that 4-Hers are adequately equipped to handle those challenges of the coming century.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Reid, cooperative extension, rural versus urban, do you consider it still primarily a rural-focused organization, or can you speak to the areas where we're moving into an urban-type setting?
Thank you, Chairman Scott. Yeah, this extension service covers every acre of our nation. It's true that our history and our focus is on rural America. And when I look at the rural parts of my own state, Extension provides a critical service to rural communities and those managing the land. In many cases, we are the only provider of knowledge in town. And in that respect, it's a very responsible leadership position in order to continue to make that contribution to rural America. We also, though, however, need to pay attention to the rest of the customers of the Extension service, the residents of our state that may not live in rural areas, but they depend upon rural areas. And so we are learning to adapt our programs and to use knowledge to react to the needs of urban citizens as well. One of the particular themes of the conversation that's growing in Oregon is the concept of interdependence. I think we too often speak about rural and urban divides or technology divides. Instead, we're finding that residents of our state have a common future, and by co-committing to the value of, in this case, rural Oregon, urban residents benefit as well.
Thank you, Dr. Ramaswamy. You mentioned the ability of the extension system to adapt to the changing needs. How is USDA facilitating the extension's adoption of new technologies and new ways to communicate with its with its customers?
Mr. Chairman, in multiple different ways, one of which is we have this program called E-Extension that I referred to in my opening comments, and this basically allows for us to bring together the best brains, intellectual resources from around the country to address the questions that we've got. And so that has created a network across the United States, online network as well as local networks that have been created. And so USDA basically facilitates that effort through funding that we provide as well.
Thank you, Doctor. And I'll tell you, somebody from the Farm Belt, getting the information to the people who are actually putting the crop in the ground is extremely important. And appreciate all of you being here to testify. And with that, I'll yield the remainder of my time and turn it over to Mr. Schrader from Oregon for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to Dr. Ramaswamy here, where do you see the biggest growth of requests for information now from Extension agents and Extension Service?
Congressman Schrader, the biggest growth has been really in the realm of youth, families, and nutrition area. Obviously agricultural questions continue to come as well, but really the growth has been in issues pertaining to children and youth and nutrition.
How have the states responded? It's been tough budget times, and we struggle here, as you know, in D.C. to maintain a budget. And I know from my experience back in Oregon as budget chair that it was tough to fund some of these things. What's your experience with other states around the country and funding for Extension?
Well, the funding for Extension has been, particularly in the last about 3 to 4 years with the very deep recession that we had, has been very challenging. In fact, across America, I think Extension has lost about a third of its footprint. When I'm talking about a third of its footprint, I'm talking about boots on the ground. These are Extension agents. These are the folks that really translate the knowledge and deliver to the end users. And we've lost that. And I think, we need to be very concerned that this global preeminence that I was referring to is in jeopardy if we do not go ahead and turn things around. And we need to make the commensurate public investments. And it's just not the public investments. We're going to have to bring in private enterprise as well. And indeed, across America, a lot of the different states have figured out different ways to bring in private investments along with the public investments as well.
Dr. Reid, you've often talked about going beyond outreach, trying to get people engaged and stuff. Could you elaborate a little bit on the engagement aspect you talk about?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Congressman Schrader, thank you for the opportunity. The concept in the word engagement, it's finding its way into our work more and more common. What it does is recognizes that we don't have a corner on all the knowledge, but that we can work collaboratively with those that we're serving and partners in order to recognize and put that knowledge to work. It really seeks to make the universities a better community by establishing reciprocal benefits. So while we're contributing to the success of those we serve, we are also learning and becoming better over time. As I mentioned in my testimony, the issues of today are so complicated, there's not a single answer to many of them. So we find ourselves developing with our partners a set of alternatives and consequences, and then helping those that need to make the decisions make the one that's best for them.
And you have, Dr. Reid, again, we've alluded to different core missions for Extension, and it seems, listening to the testimony from all the witnesses here, there's really a panoply of opportunities that Extension serves. Do you feel that's still the appropriate role for Extension? Again, tough budget-limited environments. We're trying to make sure taxpayer dollars go as far as they can. Is it possible for Extension to continue to have that broad continuum of services?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Congressman Schrader, it's true that we listen to people's issues and try to respond. However, it's more important for us to provide a focus on those issues that we have a capacity to respond to, and so that we're utilizing our resources in the best possible way.
Well, that's good to hear. Sometimes it's tough to be all things to all people, I think, at the end of the day.
I occasionally describe the Extension Service as sounding like the parable of the blind men and the elephant. People believe they know Extension based upon the part that they touch, and if you're a master gardener, you think that's all Extension is, but it's true that we serve a variety of audiences.
I'm glad you do. Mr. Foster.
Yes, sir.
Sorry you got in a little late. Apologize for that, but in your written testimony, you talk about that joint land-grant state plan of work. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, sir. We started in Clemson University in South Carolina State in 1999, where our plan for the state, we meet, we coordinate our activities, goals, and objectives so that there is not a sense of duplication, so that when we're speaking to our state legislators as well as our federal legislators, that question becomes a moot point. And now that Mr. Ramaswamy has taken over, all states will have to submit a state joint plan of work for the land grant services and have it approved prior to receiving their appropriation. And we started that with Clemson. 2000 was the first year that we've done it. We've done it every year since.
Well, congratulations. That's a very smart way to go, especially in this environment.
Yes, sir.
Last quick question to our youngest witness up there. What should Congress be doing to better support 4-H? Great program.
Well, already this committee does so much for cooperative extension. Continuing the work we do, adding another century onto what we already have, obviously continuing to grow is very important to us. And one of the most exciting things that we get to see, and I get to see as a youth trustee, is the growth globally. I just got to visit Africa this past September, and this completely testifies to the life-saving principles of 4-H. Here in the United States, we measure success with a blue ribbon, but they measure success by being able to eat dinner. So thank you very much for the work you do. It is much appreciated by 7 million people around the world.
Thank you very much, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I now recognize the gentleman from Illinois for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each of you for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Foster, for making the long trek. Welcome to our world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, it was mentioned that the Smith-Lever Act was part of the beginning of one of the great things that happen in central Illinois when it comes to extension services, it comes to 4-H, and it comes to land-grant universities like the one I represent, the University of Illinois. Very proud of some of the partnerships that the University of Illinois has been able to make in my community, and I've seen young people grow into great leaders who have gone through the same programs that Ms. Hammock that you continue to tout today, and I'm very thankful for that. I want to get into the questions really quick. One of my priorities is food security and food insecurity in this country, and I would urge each of you to read a book that I just finished, written by one of my constituents, Howard Buffett. It's called 40 Chances, and talks about food insecurity issues globally and how to address them by using America's ingenuity. And I think many of the ideas that he talks about in that book would be applicable to some of the issues that you would address with the folks you serve every day. Dr. Ramaswamy, you mentioned food security in your testimony too, and how have you seen the extension services successfully tackle some of the issues we're seeing in some of our poorest communities?
Congressman Davis, thank you very much for that question. And just hearkening back to the efforts that are going on in your state, with the district that you represent, as well, in the fine work that's being done by the University of Illinois. For example, the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program has been very successful in making sure that the limited resource individuals their needs are met, their health needs, nutrition needs, et cetera, are being met. And so there's one example of FNEP actually reaching out and working with particularly limited resource individuals. And in addition to that, we've also got programs in family and consumer sciences and in the nutrition area, and supplemental nutrition assistance program education, for example, the SNAP-Ed program that we've got as well. Again, our extension colleagues in Illinois, they partner with the FNEP colleagues and work collaboratively to make sure that there's good education about safe food, healthy foods, food safety, et cetera, addressing the food security / food insecurity that you're referring to.
Well, thank you very much. Ms. Hammock, you mentioned food security in your testimony too. What can you tell me that 4-H is doing to help address some of the issues that we see here in this country?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Congressman. I'm so excited, actually, that you asked that question. I had the opportunity to go to New York City this past April, and actually today, several of our trustees and council members are visiting Tucson, Arizona. Mm-hmm. And one of the wonderful things that 4-H is doing is giving children and high schoolers the knowledge, the tools, the opportunity to grow in urban food deserts. So we got to visit the Food and Finance High School in Manhattan, and it's a 5-story high school. I did not know high schools could go up. I thought they just went out. But it was just so amazing to see them use aquaponics and hydroponics to produce food for themselves and their communities and to sell that. So it's not only just food security, it's economic security because they're selling it. And I can't wait to hear about the Tucson trip when people get back later on this week. But that's what 4-H, that's just a little part of what 4-H is doing.
That is great. And you know, in Illinois, we take for granted that everybody knows where the food comes from that gets to the table. So to see you participate, to see 4-H participate in trips like that to highlight what's going on in urban areas, I think is essential to addressing many of the food insecurity problems that we have in this country. I only have a few seconds left, and I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for what you do. It is a problem. The food security issue is a problem with so many kids. I'm very concerned about the school nutrition program where we've seen kids have to get by on less calories. And those are some of the kids who need it the most. They're the most food insecure kids that we have, those who rely on the free lunch program. And it frustrates me that many cafeterias in my district are limited in what nutritious foods they can actually give to our kids. Washington shouldn't be the barometer of what kids get to eat. It should be a local school district issue. And I appreciate what you do outside of the school to highlight some of the food security issues. And thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. And thank you for your service. I yield back.
I now recognize the gentlewoman from Ohio for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I have a bad cold. I thank my colleague for allowing me to go out of order. I actually only have two questions, and they are both to you, Dr. Foster, Mr. Foster. One, in your testimony, you discussed how 1890 land-grant institutions have a special mission and mandate under the Act as opposed to 1862 institutions. Can you tell me what that special mission and or mandate is as you see it and why it is necessary? And secondly, many of the best jobs and our ability to compete in a global marketplace are related to STEM. Mm-hmm. Yet the number of minorities and women choosing STEM majors in college is disappointingly low. How can cooperative extension specifically at the 1890 institutions address this issue?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. The first question is the special mission mandate is to serve those populations that traditionally have been underserved in our communities. And that goes to urban areas, limited resource based on income, education, or other resources. That's a special mission that we see that we have as 1890. Secondly, in reference to STEM, most of our universities are having a problem attracting members in the STEM field unless we conduct those programs like my former board member spoke about at 4-H and Youth Development. And several of our 1890 universities have youth programs that introduce students and women to STEM-associated disciplines in an early age. In fact, in South Carolina, we have TechBridge, which is rising 6th and 7th and some 8th graders, where they actually build a computer, load all of the software, are taught all the ins and outs of how that CPU operates, and then they're able to maintain a group of conscientious students, and then teach those students and reteach those students and teach people in their communities. So that's just one of the examples of a STEM program that they really don't realize they're in STEM. They're just messing with gadgets. But at the final closing program, to hear them articulate what they've learned in those 5.5 weeks, and sometimes 6 weeks, will let you see that they will truthfully garner the support they need at home and in their communities to pursue a STEM career.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from New York for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'd like to share a little story with the group before I ask my question to Dr. Ramasamy. I was the county executive up in Erie County, elected back in '07, very rural area, but I now represent 8 counties, including some small counties. The Erie County Cooperative really is a major supporter of Cornell, and the Cornell Cooperative, which, while it's located just outside my district, has offices throughout. Now, when I was elected, our county was effectively bankrupt. The state had taken over our finances, and I go line by the budget, and I see this budget line for the Cornell Cooperative. I don't know what that is. You know, that was 7 years ago. So I put that on the list of items that just might not be funded. Lo and behold, no one comes to see me, so when I go to work through that, I eliminated all the funding to Cornell Cooperative. I've got to plead guilty. I now know what I know and can't believe I did that, but I think you could appreciate it. Needless to say, I got a panicked phone call and found out if I didn't fund Cornell Cooperative through the county, they would get no funding, no federal funding. So I put it back in the budget. But my question is this: with tight finances around the country, certainly New York State probably more than most, the rules are if you don't have county funding as the match, the cooperative, in this case Cornell Cooperative, wouldn't get any funding. So I just have to wonder, are you hearing concerns from others? In the case of Erie County, we dwarf the size of the other counties. Without our support, Cornell Cooperative would not continue, and that's the lifeblood of most of our other counties: dairy, specialty crops. We have apples and peaches, and our apple growers want to sell their apples to McDonald's, and Cornell's been very, very helpful in making sure they've got what they need to meet the quality standards. So I am concerned going forward, needing the county match, and I understand multiplying the dollars by having counties and state put the money in, but priorities are different in every county, and I just wonder if you've heard that and if you share my concerns and have anything else if you've heard this kind of story elsewhere.
Congressman Collins, thank you very much for that question, and you saw a smile on my face as you were talking about it. Smile in the sense of a recognition of that situation that we've got throughout America, where many, many local communities have had difficulty meeting the budgetary needs that we've got as well. And not unlike Erie County in Indiana, in Oregon, in Illinois, as I said, about a third of our footprint has been lost across the United States. Washington State has lost about 50% of the extension funding, for example. So this is a situation that we've got. And so one of the things that has happened, sir, is that Cornell University or Oregon State University or others that have had a situation like this, and Lane County is one of the counties in Oregon that saw a similar situation as well, is that the universities, the state funding and the federal funding were still available to be deployed, and then the neighboring counties picked up the slack, as it were. It was not like, they were left high and dry and walked away from, and, there was a need for a cash flow type of a situation as well. So the folks at the land-grant universities are aware of this, as are, ourselves here in the USDA as well, and we try to figure out a way to, create a path forward.
Yeah, I can tell you after the scare that I put them in my first year, they came with a very detailed presentation each year after that. And they're in my office up here, I think, at least 4 or 5 times a year, because they know that I know the issues as well, and I'm close to our legislators in the county, and sometimes have to share with them through tough budgetary times. I'd like to also mention, maybe I should be one of your witnesses, but the 4-H in our rural communities, when they don't have the same menu of options for the kids, is very, very, very strong. Well attended. Those are our future farmers. Many of our farms are 5, 6 generations old. And as such, it's just almost a given, the kids, whether it's dairy farming or crop farming. But I would just like to compliment Ms. Hammond, because she represents what I've seen in many cases, young folks able to present themselves. You say public speaking's your passion, and I can see that it is. Most people don't share that passion. We have members of Congress that won't give 1-minute speeches because they're afraid to talk in front of the world on C-SPAN. I'm just making that up. But I just want to compliment you for coming in. Thank you for coming in, because you really do put a face on what's good about 4-H and all the funding that we have. I'm just grateful that we've got a 5-year budget now that's actually increased some of these fundings. You know, flat is the new win, and the fact that we got a little more money in this shows the bipartisan support for everything Smith-Lever does and the impact across the country. So, again, thank you all for coming in. It's been very interesting. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to all of you for being here today. I appreciate it. Washington State University is the original land-grant university in my state, and I'm fortunate to have an extension up in Mount Vernon in my district, where they're doing great work, research, as well as bringing members of the community together. They have a bread lab, bringing bakers and wheat growers together so they understand the impact that different crop varieties have on nutrition and the baking process and taste, et cetera. So there's a lot of great work happening up there. And a lot of the work they're doing is supported through programs like the Specialty Crop Research Initiative, and it does have a huge and lasting impact, not just to the local growers, but to entire industries and broadly to the public. And research on improving crop yields through plant mitigation, sun exposure, irrigation, mulch, all have had a dramatic impact on our food supply. And so I think we see real results from the work they're doing. That kind of leads me to a question for you, Dr. Ramaswamy. It's my understanding that after the last Farm Bill that the USDA began awarding multi-year research grants, maybe more than it had done historically. And so I wondered, do you think that that's a successful path, and are you still looking at awarding larger multi-year grants, given that research is something that takes place over a longer period of time?
Congresswoman Delbert, thank you so much for that question, and I want to congratulate you as well. And Washington State University has done some tremendous work in your state and in your district as well. In regards to the multi-year research grants that we started doing as a result of the 2008 Farm Bill, yes, that's correct. And what we've done is the question that you asked me, has it been beneficial? Is it, achieving what it set out to do? We've asked the National Academies of Science to actually look at that question. And they're going to be providing us a report in June, and we're going to take that report and determine whether or not that's been a successful model. But in the meantime, we've not quit. What we've done is to basically continue those multi-year investments, but we've scaled it back down a little bit, where we're doing $30 and $40 million grants. In fact, Washington State has received a few of those. We've scaled, and UW as well, University of Washington as well, we've scaled it back down to between $5 and $15 million, and we will continue to do those continuation awards as well, because it allows us to invest. These challenges that we're addressing are really complex, and it requires multiple individuals to come together, multiple disciplines to come together over multiple years. And so we'll not walk away from that, but we're trying to scale how much it's going to be and what sort of objectives might we be addressing as well.
Okay. No, it'd be interesting to see the results of that, because when I talk to our farmers and our researchers, they want to know that they have the investment going forward so they can really do the research well. And sometimes that means having the visibility going forward. They know they can complete the research they're doing, and it isn't always in a short-term time span that they have to look at. One thing that we saw during the debate over the Farm Bill was that while the importance of agriculture is widely understood in some areas, it may not resonate so much in other parts of the country. And I was wondering, and maybe this is a question a little bit for everyone, how can we use tools like Smith-Lever to deepen and broaden the education across the country and that connection to agriculture that we all do have? In areas of my district, there's a deep connection. In other places, people aren't as aware of what's happening close by in agriculture. And so I wondered what your thoughts are, what we can do to improve that going forward.
I'll take a shot at it very quickly. Indeed, Smith Lever and the Cooperative Extension Service is the translator of knowledge and the deliverer of that knowledge to the end users. And they've done that exquisitely well over the last 100 years. And part of that is to educate the populace as well. Along with that program, and we need to continue to foster that, along with that, we've also got programs like 4-H, for example. Ag in the Classroom is another outstanding program that enables our young, particularly the young kids, to develop the knowledge as well. So it's going to have to be a multi-pronged approach. You know, earlier we had the question about science, technology, engineering, and math. I myself like to throw the letter A into it about agriculture. And in fact, in America, a lot of the challenges that we see today is in part about obesity and things like that, is in part the lack of knowledge about food and where food comes from. So we really need to do everything we can to convey that sense of the education that we need. And Smith Lever Act and Cooperative Extension Service have really allowed us to do that very well.
Mr. Chairman, Congresswoman Delbert, thank you for the question. And I think it's all surrounding food. You know, it's become almost a tired phrase that while only 2% of Americans farm, 100% of us eat. But it's true that people care about food and the food systems that surround them. The Pacific Northwest is a very foodie area, and to the point where some farmers markets are now labeling the food with how many miles it's traveled to get to people. And so I believe that we have a teachable moment for Americans in order to help them understand the consequences and the interdependencies that all of us have on our farms and farm markets. In fact, at Oregon State just 2 weeks ago, we hosted what was called the Small Farms Conference, and there's a large and growing number of individuals farming relatively small parcels, and they were regarded at this conference as rock stars. I mean, there was clearly a sense of pride and identity that I hadn't seen before.
Thank you. Looks like my time's expired. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you all participating today, and I think you guys will agree that God intended us to live at 70 degrees and above.
Yes.
Being from Florida, the great state of Florida, where we have the University of Florida and the IFAS, which is the Institute of Food and Agricultural Science, and we're blessed to have 67 different extension agents throughout our state with the 67 counties, having a diverse ecosystem from the Florida Keys, where you have key limes, coconuts, tropical plants, and of course margaritas are down there, all the way up to the Georgia line to a more moderate temperate zone. And you know, Florida, the second biggest industry in Florida is agriculture, and we're proud of that. And my background is I'm a veterinarian for the last 30 years, and I hold my roots with agricultural very dear to me, and I appreciate the effort and the work you guys have done to strengthen the extension agents and the work that they do, especially you, Ms. Hammock, with the 4-H. And I guess my questions that I'd like to ask you is, what challenges are you seeing in extending the youth programs, especially in the inner city areas where they, you know, we just need to get into those areas, I think, so much more. And you're talking about Manhattan with the 5-story high schools and the hydroponics. I think that's a great way to break into an area, but to get people involved in ag, especially today when we see so many people, you know, the agriculture is something they buy at a store. And we all know that you can't have a secure nation without a secure food source. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on the challenges that you've seen.
Absolutely. And the challenges I've seen have actually sparked my interest in my major, which is agriculture communication. And this kind of goes back to your question about educating the population about why agriculture is so important. And those challenges are very evident. They're very pronounced. Like Mr. Reid said, 2% of the population feeds 100%. And so that is an obvious challenge. And that is the first step of getting into the high schools in Manhattan and the large inner city areas of Atlanta, Manhattan, San Francisco, all of the larger cities. And this is a great starting point. I'm very proud of 4-H and the work we've done through the Cornell Cooperative Extension in Manhattan. But it is a starting point. And
have you seen specific challenges that we can address or maybe help? I know funding is the big issue. You know, more funding will solve a lot of these things. But just getting into a program, are you running into resistance?
A program such as
like in the inner cities to develop a 4-H program or, you know, ag programs or anything like that?
There's actually been no resistance at all. People, which is great, absolutely. But there's really been no pushback on this. It's one of those things that people are very welcome to do, and I think us agricultural communicators are trying to make that story a little bit better.
Okay, Dr. Ramaswamy, you were talking about something you brought up, and I see this in Florida dealing with IFAS on nutritional counseling as it deals with the nutritional programs. What we see is there's not only a undernutrition in some areas, but there's a malnutrition that you brought out that leads to type 2 diabetes. You see a big role of the IFAS or the extension agents going out and educating people. You want to elaborate on that, what else we can do?
So there are multiple areas where our extension agents, our extension educators might ought to be involved, are involved already in many, many states, including your state as well through IFAS. And obviously it is in the production of healthy food. Specialty crops particularly are known to have very significant positive health benefits. So you've got extension agents involved in that part of it, in making sure that specialty crops are grown, they have healthier traits, the genetics part of it that's being incorporated as well. That's one area. The second area is in the education piece of it through Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program education, SNAP-Ed, and FNEP, the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program, so that they're reaching out to the young people through schools, through faith-based and other non-governmental entities, and we need to continue to foster that education as well. The third area is in the type of agriculture we practice as well, in terms of health impacts on the communities that live around where food is being produced as well. So education is a very significant part of this, and Extension certainly has, in all these different domains, been providing the knowledge necessary, reaching out through multiple conduits, as it were.
Right. We just had a director from one of the food banks come into our office today, and we were talking about canning. On the farm today, we have farm communities and their families. They go into canning. They're putting up beans, corn, and all that, and that's an art that's being lost that I hope we continue to promote throughout our population, so that people say, you know what, we can produce our own foods. And my wife and I, when we were at the University of Florida, we were poor as a church mouse, and we had a garden plot that we went out there. They had where you could go out and garden, and so we took advantage of that. And I think that's something we need to promote more. I appreciate all of you. I'm proud to be associated with the extension agents and the Smith Lever Act. I'm proud of their heritage. Thank you all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentlewoman from New Hampshire for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Schrader, and thank you to all of the witnesses today. This has been a very enlightening hearing, and I appreciate the work that you do. I represent New Hampshire, Western New Hampshire, and the University of New Hampshire is our land-grant university, and we have farmers and foresters across the state that are working with the extension. I wanted to mention to Ms. Hammock that I served on the board of the 4-H in New Hampshire a few years back, and I'm very impressed by the program. My town has the largest state fair, and so 4-H and all of that goes with it has been a big boon for us. I think we're all amazed and impressed by Congressman Smith and Lever over 100 years ago to have been thinking about this and come up with a program that was so sustainable and so effective in so many different environments. And I'm sure those of us here today would like to be a part of something that has that kind of longevity. I want to focus my questions briefly here on this discussion about healthy people, healthy planet, healthy economy, and how that's tied together. And in particular, I represent a district that has a mix of urban, suburban, and rural. But the challenge for me, and this came out during the Farm Bill, is that it's the rural areas where we tend to have the challenges with access to healthy food. And I find that somewhat distressing because this has happened over the course of my generation. When I was a girl, everyone had a garden and people raised animals and raised food. But now I think part of it is just people's lives are so busy and we've lost some of that. And so I guess my question is directed at the panel, anyone that would like to respond on what we can do to fit healthy food back into people's lifestyles. And I want to commend my colleague, Marcia Fudge, who had an amendment that we did pass on food deserts, and that will be helpful in the rural communities as well. But I welcome your thoughts.
Congresswoman Custer, indeed, as you said right towards the end of your opening comments, that we have the situation with food deserts in rural areas in a country where we know how to grow food. We can feed the entire world. And thus the mind-boggling situation that we've got these food deserts. And in part, it is the logistical aspects that we need to be addressing. Of food distribution that needs to occur as well, along with education, access to safe and secure food. These are things that our extension folks are really addressing. If you go across the United States, even within New Hampshire itself, the University of New Hampshire very clearly is addressing these sorts of questions of making sure that people that have no or less access to food, their needs are being met as well. And one other example about this connectivity between healthy people, healthy planet, and healthy economy is University of New Hampshire has an excellent program that works on greenhouses. And greenhouse industry in New Hampshire is about a $250 million industry, and that employs about 12,000 people. And the work that's being done within greenhouses to grow crops, fruit and vegetables and things like that, and incorporated into that is more effective and efficient means of energy use. Yep. And so there's a 10 to 15% reduction in the cost of energy producing these healthy foods that now is being made available for distribution, and it creates jobs as well.
Great. Thank you. Excellent example. Yes, Mr. Reid.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Congresswoman Custer. I often use healthy planet, people, and economy to sort of help frame conversations because you might recognize them as the pillars of sustainability, that they're all interdependent and we need to work on all in order to advance kind of social welfare. And while this is only a partial answer to your question, it seems to me that compared to yesteryear, society today is so time-driven in both urban and rural areas that we simply can't find easy ways to take the time to produce the food that I think we would all enjoy seeing in rural or urban environments. So if we could figure out a way to slow down the clock, I mean, that might be a way to make some progress. However, seriously, our Master Gardener program, which was our most successful and significant volunteer training program, has made a dramatic and observable shift to food production, where historically it had been focused more on the environmental side of things. And something that is central to the stock and trade of extension education is to work in peer-to-peer education, because individuals can accomplish sometimes more than we can. And so it's my hope that we could adapt the Master Gardener program to find a place in urban environments to do exactly what you described.
Thank you. My time is up, and I have a guest from the food bank, so I'm going to have to step out. But thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. And before we adjourn, I invite the ranking member to make any closing remarks that he has.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. What a great hearing. A great hearing. In tough times in our great country, it's nice to see a positive influence continue to just, take no prisoners and continue to be a leading, guiding light in food production, leadership, and for our younger generation, to see them grow and develop the way they do through 4-H is just emblematic of, I hope, what the future of this country is all about. I had the privilege of being guided through my educational career by 3 different land-grant institutions, Illinois, Cornell, and of course my Oregon State. Go Beavs! And really appreciate that opportunity. And I think everyone's been influenced and impacted more than they probably realize by the work these ladies and gentlemen do every day and under tough circumstances. So happy 100th anniversary to you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Schrader, and ma'am and gentlemen, thank you for being here. This committee, I'm proud to be a member of the Ag Committee, where, as you can see, we're able to work closely together. We understand that food security is a part of national security, and we understand that this act has helped us as Americans and as a country provide that nutrition that Americans need in a very efficient and effective manner. Ms. Hammock, thank you for representing 4-H in the manner that you do, such a professional. I have a tremendous amount of respect for that organization and the young leaders that come out of that, and look forward to the day when when people like you are representing us in Congress. And with that said, any written statements from the witnesses shall be made part of today's record, and under the rules of the committee, the record of today's hearing will remain open for 10 calendar days to receive additional material and supplementary written responses from the witnesses to any question posted by a member. This hearing of the Subcommittee on Horticulture, Research, Biotechnology, and Foreign Agriculture is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.